Welcome to the Inspired Conversations podcast, hosted by me, Andrea Cova-Bernal. As a college counselor, I'm inspired not only by the incredible students I work with, but also by remarkable change makers in higher education, each with powerful stories of their own. Through storytelling and shared narratives, I believe in the power of connection. Join me as we delve into dialogue and share valuable advice for college success. Hello, welcome to the Inspired Conversations podcast. Once again, everybody, we are welcome to August. We've just started the academic school year time. So if you are tuning in today and you are about to start any level of school, whether that be high school, college, grad school, master's, whatever it is, PhD programs, I just want to wish you nothing but luck and endless amount of support from everyone in Inspired Conversations. I just want to also pass on the love to all of you for an awesome academic year. I know there has been a lot going on this year, so we just give you credit and love during this time. And that's really the intention behind Inspired Conversations. I'm super excited to welcome our new guest today. Zulma, how are you?
Good. Thanks, Andrea, for having me today. I'm really excited to share more about my journey. And again, thanks for having this platform to really, empower students in higher education.
My pleasure. And you said I love that it's now a new platform again for just sharing stories and highlighting some amazing folks in all areas of higher ed. I say this all the time. It's not just those folks who work on campuses, but those folks who work in the career pipelines at the end of the tunnel who might be allies and resources for you. And so today is one of those interviews, a really great ally, also somebody I met. Talk about networking. We actually met through a networking, I would say an effort started by Daniela Pierra Bravo. She wrote a book called The Other. If you haven't picked it up, read it. It's definitely really good. And it was all about a small group of Latino women sort of finding their space in their professional world, right? Trying to find creative ways to not feel like the other. And so that's how I met Zulma. And so we definitely did a lot of sharing during that small group. And as a result, I realized it was really there that I realized the power of storytelling can be expanded and extended in this type of platform. So with that said, Zulma, I know a little bit about your story, but I want to pass the mic on to you because I think it's really powerful. Can we start all the way back? I know you've had a few transitions in your life. Can you share a little bit about your personal story, where you come from, your background, and how it all started?
For sure. Thank you, Andrea. First of all, I'm Zulma Guzman. I was born in the city of Guadalajara in Jalisco in Mexico, raised in a very small town in Illinois called LaSalle. And to give you perspective, it was about 9,000 people. And, I'm a proud first-gen Latina, oldest of four. And I grew up in a very traditional Mexican household where you would probably say that calculated risk wasn't really a thing back. And by now I probably have taken every single one. I think the last one is probably starting my own business. But I was in my hometown up until Illinois Valley when I attended Illinois Valley Community College, and that's where I really started to really unlock my potential and really see what I truly wanted to do. And it wasn't until I moved to Chicago to pursue my degree in finance at DePaul University where I really, was like, this is what I truly wanted to do in pursuing the career where I am today. So upon graduating DePaul, I got the opportunity to relocate to start my career in banking. And, it was an opportunity for me to leave Illinois and move to Georgia. And I didn't know anyone at the time besides just my team who had interviewed me. But it's been a great experience personally and professionally, being able to just get out of my comfort zone and really get plugged in the community. So currently I'm an analyst in the middle market banking. Outside of my day-to-day job, I'm really passionate on two different things. So one is a lifelong learner. So that's why I'm really, passionate about higher education. Like, how can I continue to feed my mind in so many different aspects of life? And I have this one thing, and for me personally, that every year, every quarter, I will do some type of self-development. And for me this year, that's kind of how I met you, Andrea, through the course of Daniela. And then of course, I'm a community leader. How can I really continue to make social positive change? And it's really about three things. One, entrepreneurs. How can I really help you, scale your business or bring your idea to life? And then two, woman empowerment. A lot of industries are still very male dominated. How can we really help empower and support each other to continue to elevate? And then third is empowering the next generation. Me being there once upon a time, I really want to be able to continue to be there and really help eliminate those barriers and continue to reach those goals at a faster pace. So that's really a little bit about myself and kind of where I'm at today in life.
That's excellent. I feel like there's so much that I want to unpack and bring to the table here and I think it all started with your transition. You started at a community college. This is something we've talked about a lot on this podcast. I didn't realize this when I was, lining up my list of speakers, but the majority of y'all started at a community college, which I think is fantastic. And look at where you're at now. Normally, when I talk to students about starting at a community college, I say just go in with a plan as best as you can so you can get in and get out, get to your dream for your college as soon as possible. How was that process for you, really quickly? But then when you were at DePaul, did you feel like you had a voice, a space? What was that? I've never been to DePaul myself, actually. So maybe you can share a little bit about that experience as a Latina.
Yeah, for sure. And going into community college, I of course I had a plan that never goes as planned, as they say.
Yeah.
Um, to give you insight on how I landed at DePaul is I've always have had a very curiosity in me. And I worked at Marshall's as a cashier at my hometown, and my colleague at the time was talking about how her father represented the high school that I went to and had gone to DePaul for law school. So something stood with me that day on like DePaul, like the word just stood with me. So that night I went home and I researched, but that's really how I landed at DePaul actually, through just the curiosity. And community college really helped me, I would say, like just prepare myself for that transition and for what I was expecting. But when I officially transitioned to DePaul, coming from a very small town, I was like, whoa, what have I been living in? I didn't realize the unlimited opportunities that were out there in such a big city. And I feel that when I first moved to Chicago and at DePaul, I often felt like I was behind on so
Mm.
many different opportunities. Nowadays, a lot of college students feel like they need 4 or 5 internships to really land a job. And I feel like I had that pressure at the time. But I think reflecting back on my journey, it really was, everyone's at their own pace for a reason. So how I was able to really, find that space in college was really getting plugged in with like-minded individuals. Like, how can I really build a community that's going to really help me like support and elevate me? So that was really how I was able to really find that space, because without really having that support, it can be difficult.
So who are the people that you maybe found or communities that you found at a school like DePaul? Did you find that there were a lot of Latinos there, or did you have to sort of find it elsewhere?
Yeah, so I would say that DePaul overall is a very, very scarcity in terms of like Latinos. So I
Mm.
actually had I joined a sorority. It was a multicultural sorority whose values were all about, cultural awareness, leadership, right? And that's how I really was able to surround myself with like other people who also looked like me, but also trying to not just stay within Latinos. So I personally think when you evolve yourself around so many different groups of people, you really start to really learn and grow as a person.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I think sometimes we have to step outside of our comfort zone. And even though we want to find community in our large, big spaces, sometimes it starts with our own, like the smaller sort of, plant your seeds with our people that we feel comfortable with. And then you start getting that voice to extend it elsewhere. I think that sometimes helps. So if you're tuning in today and maybe this is your first year of college, thinking about, well, how can I first find like my small community to get bigger and bigger and bigger after that. And then one thing that you also mentioned, and this goes back to earlier, is you've made a few transitions in your life. You said Guadalajara was where it all started in Mexico, and then to La Salle, which I'm assuming is very tiny compared to where Chicago stands. So
Yeah.
what what was that transition like of I call it leaving to learn and sort of stepping outside of your comfort zone and being okay with it, with change and stepping outside of maybe things that were holding you back, or, why did you move in the first place, and what, can you just share a little bit about how you made that transition successful for you other than just the college experience?
Yeah, no, thank you. I would say, like, from a very young age, I've always been very just I would come around the word curious, continue to be curious. I was always curious of what else is out there, what more is out there. And I think and it also ties with the type of career that I wanted to do, because just from such a young age, I was always in love with how, all these like businesses were around, and I always was curious on how they worked. And I think that's also what drove me to Chicago. And I knew if I really wanted to get there, it was really putting myself in an uncomfortable situation. So I think continue to learn those different aspects. A lot of the times, there was a moment in time where I wasn't sure if that was the right, leaving my family from such a small town to learning so many different things in a bigger city. But really making that transition outside of just college is, how, is really having that plan, like what's in it for me in this city outside of just college. And I think, again, just having that support system has been really helpful for me.
Yeah. And then I think you've made a transition to Atlanta now too. So we went from LaSalle to Chicago, now to Atlanta for your career. And one thing you and I were talking a little bit about earlier is this idea of finance. So students, this is such a lucrative idea, lucrative career, something that I highly encourage folks to sort of consider. But I will honestly say, as a college counselor, that's not the first thing that comes to mind when especially young Latino women, right? It's not the first thing, hey, I want to major in finance or economics. And so, can you tell us a little bit about why finance? How did you come to choosing that as your career? And then how have you seen that in your space as a Latina?
Yeah. And I think this also leads back to my childhood. So my dad and his brothers ran a Mexican, family restaurant, and I was always kind of around that entrepreneurial kind of world. And so like I used to always play with fake money when I was little. Like I was always like, how can I was always envisioning like my little like, young self, like running big businesses and that sort of thing. So when high school hit, I was in between accounting or finance. And really because I think, just from industry research of what the career opportunities were, I think it was really critical for me to really understand how a business works in terms of a numbers aspect. Um, so when I was, leaning towards, going towards college, I think what really helped me lean towards finance, it was a lot more broad than just being so focused on the accounting side. But I would say, not a lot of, Latinas or like Latinos, think about this career right away off the bat. And I think for me, it's just been like, I really want to be able to be someone who's successfully, understanding businesses and helping on that side of things. So I think for me, it's been something just that I didn't think about, oh, I'm like the only Latina. It's just something that I need to do it and I need to get there.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point where it's even if there aren't many that look like you, that's why it's so important that you're there, because with a deficit, like Latinas really need to be represented in a lot of fields, I believe. But just because you don't see so many of you there doesn't mean you shouldn't pursue it. In fact, it's more of a push to pursue it so that we can see more of you there. And so yeah, finance definitely isn't one of the things that pops out. What advice would you give though a student who's maybe thinking, maybe math, they have a really good skill at math, or they've had entrepreneurial skills in the past? I think I used to have a student in high school, who, not in high school, excuse me, when I first started counseling, who would come to our after school program with an empty tin of cupcakes, and she was undocumented. And so she was trying to raise money for her college experience. And so she would bake a dozen cupcakes every day and would sell them for $1, $2. And she would always come to our program with her empty tin of cupcakes. And it was just something, all this stuff, as we have students selling chips after school and stuff from their backpack. So what advice would you give students who maybe haven't thought of finances or entrepreneurial, but like, hey, start thinking about these things now so that you can be prepared?
Yeah, no, I think like the biggest thing, like, for those that are curious and interested in going into the finance, or entrepreneurial world is I just want to really emphasize like that these type of skills, like all the technical stuff and all those kind of skills are very, teachable, and as long as you're a very coachable person. So I would say like the best skill to what one can have is those soft skills, really, those soft skills and networking, really, if you want to be in finance, surround yourself with people who are in that finance world. If you want to launch a business, be around people who are, have those businesses and running. You can continue to really learn from those people so that when you are ready to kind of, pursue that area, you have that support again, and that network that will help you get there. But again, I think a lot of those skills can be very teachable, but just having those soft skills and willing to learn.
Yeah, willing to learn, that's it. And would you, or I guess, what would you say to a student who does have maybe like an idea and they don't know if it's a good idea, but it's an idea that they have, and or thinking about like the first steps in starting a business? Where do they start? If even if they're in school or out of school or looking for career and they, design or paint something, what would you give advice would you give to them?
Yeah, my best advice is start. I think a lot of people wait to have everything built out, the marketing, the team, everything. And the best idea is just get it started. If you're trying to start a cupcake business, just start selling, maybe it's 10 cupcakes a week, whatever that may be. Just start with something small and keep going from there. Don't wait to have everything so built out, because I think, time is money and you're losing time.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Time is definitely money. Hi, every moment that you're selling is money, more money in your
Yeah.
pocket, right? Yeah, but and the marketing, gosh, is so tough. It's hard to find the audience and find the time to do all the social media stuff. So, do you know of any like platforms or any resources that students can take or folks can take away who are have the entrepreneurial mindset that might be good places to look?
Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff that I currently do is just surrounding myself with entrepreneurial people on like my social platforms. Just really making sure you're taking different ideas and perks. I wouldn't say there's a specific program that I take for, entrepreneurship or that sort of thing, but it's really, just really poking around like, your socials and stuff and following the right people.
Nice, very good. And one thing that I forgot to mention at the top of the hour too is that you are a contributing author, which I think is the coolest thing. I think one of the reasons I started this platform is because I really badly wanted to uplift some voices of folks, not just in the higher ed world, of course, folks who are on the campuses that are serving our students, especially first generation and low income students. That's the population I really work with. But also to uplift voices of folks, allies, people in fields and careers that may not also be represented, right? My goal is to show, especially students of all walks of life, that the end of the tunnel, there's somebody there waiting for you to support you, and that has also been in your shoes. And so I say all of that because her book, Today's Inspired Young Latina, she's a contributing author to this. And I thought it's a really awesome idea to bring together a group of Latinas to share their story. Can you share how all of this came about, and sort of the inspiration you had behind your story?
Yes, no, so like how the book really came about. So, Jackie, who has been, one of the main like visionaries of this whole series, I've been really, she's been a great mentor over the last few years. And when the opportunity arise to really share my story, I was like, it's time to really share my story to continue to inspire others. Because a lot of the times vulnerability can be scary, but I think once you can really overcome that, you unleash a whole other side of you, and the way you show up in rooms is also very different. So really, I got the opportunity to share my story, and I think the biggest thing that I wanted people to get from reading my story is that anything is possible. Anything that you set your mind to, you can get there. And through sharing, through this whole book, I was able to really meet all the different authors in one room. We all came together and we went beyond far what was written in that book. And I think just, hearing and, feeling, seeing the emotion of everyone as everyone shared their story, I think I even felt more empowerment to go and do something out in the community. So it just goes to show that your story is powerful, and everyone has a story to share.
Yeah, I encourage especially young Latinas to pick up this book and read through some of the experiences, because I think there's going to be one at least that you can resonate with, whether it's through a story of immigration or whether it's a story of finding a career path. And I know I found a lot of the stories resonated with me personally as well, even if I don't come from a first generation background. Both of my parents went to college. I still resonated with some of the authors who had similar experiences. So I appreciated it. And you mentioned a few things in your story about like leadership programs that you did that expanded your network. One of them that I had never heard of, which was the Fig Factor Core. Can you share more about that? And then I'd love to learn more about the mentorship efforts that you have now. So let's start with Fig Factor, and then let's talk about the She League.
Yeah, so Fig Factor is really a program where it came at the time where I most needed it, my senior year of college. I think still going to my senior year, I was feeling still not very confident on who I was and what I was bringing to the table. And I think going through, the Fig Factor, which is a program really dedicated to unleashing, the full potential of young Latinas between the ages of 12 and 25. So I was about, a 6-month program where I really came together with, a variety of different women from different ages, and we were able to really, anywhere from like speaking engagements, speaking opportunities, to having, just having real conversations of what we were each going through, I think was very helpful, to really overcome some of the things that I was going at the time, and being paired up with a mentor as well. I think my mentor that I was paired up, she was in the nutrition field, which was a complete opposite field from where I currently am. But I will say that's probably been one of the best benefits of that, because I learned how to really take care of my mental state, my wellness, how to eat well. So it goes far beyond to say that, even if you're trying to connect with someone, it doesn't have to be specific in your field.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, and that's so important. I think a lot of it is the part of networking that I think we all have to understand, even as adults, is you never know who's going to be in that room with you or who's standing next to you on that elevator. And even if they, like you said, they don't have the exact career path that you're looking at, it's all about being open-minded to change, open to opportunities, open to meeting them, because you said that you learned things more about your mental health and, staying healthy. I think what you said couldn't have come at a more important time in your senior year. So I think that's really awesome. And it sounds like it's escalated. This passion for mentorship has become, maybe, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but like one of your life passions. You've now,
No, for sure.
yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because I'm inspired by the work that you're doing. And so can you share a little bit about what you started this year, what your mission is, what it's all about?
Yeah, so, I've always been really passionate about mentorship, and I think it's because I really didn't receive mentorship until towards the end of my college career.
Mhm.
Having had a mentor earlier on, I think I would have been able to accelerate more of the different opportunities that, because, you don't know when you don't know. So really, I've always have had a drive of like, how can I give back? I've always been really thankful for those people that have been there for me. And I've always have had a drive. So when I moved to Georgia, that drive in me was like, it was like a sign in me, like it's time to do something. And I met a great friend through a nonprofit, and we started to meet up at coffee shops for about a month, just going back and forth on different ideas of what we were passionate about, what can we do. And as we started to really uncover the industry, specifically around mentorship, we really saw that there was a big gap. There's a lot of mentorship programs for high school students, but not a whole lot for that specific, stage in college. And
Mm.
a lot of the times, a lot of universities have mentorship programs where the students are paired up with more of the senior college students. But I was like, there's no better opportunity than pairing them up with a professional in an industry that can expose them to different opportunities and, just career opportunities as well. So that is kind of how it really all came together. And, my friend and I built the whole program and structure. And then we took a pause in November. We didn't exactly know where we wanted to go with the program. And So we kind of took some time to ourselves, and then we had trusted advisors along the way. And one of the advisors said, why don't you join forces with an organization and make greater impact? And the first person that came to mind was Morgan, who is the founder and CEO of the She League, which is a nonprofit organization that focuses on advancing women of color, whether it's the corporate entrepreneurship space. So automatically, we talked to Morgan. Morgan was like, I love this idea. There's no better way than bridging this, with women who are already advancing in their professional career with women who are trying to really upcome in their journey. So that's really how it all happened. Fast forward 2 weeks ago, we were able to launch the program, and we have about mentees from 5 different universities participating and so many different mentors from different industries.
Oh, amazing. What universities are there, just in case there are folks tuning in wondering if they can get involved?
Yeah, so we have anywhere from Emory, Oglethorpe, Georgia Tech, UGA, and then Georgia State University. So we are, because this was the first, ever cohort, we are very focused on just Georgia for now. But in the future, we will continue to look that over.
That's completely understandable. Starting small, scaling big. That's definitely an entrepreneurial way of thinking
Yes.
about it. And with all that said, what do the students get? So if they're part of this mentorship programs, I think it's definitely scalable. I think it's amazing. When they are paired up with a mentor, what does that process look like?
Yeah, so like really how the program is designed, we're like, why don't we like create different sessions throughout the program that will also help them really acquire different skills while being paired up with that mentor. So we're really this year we have focused around their wellness. How do we take care of ourselves? Leadership, anything from emotional intelligence to what are our best, how do I best am as a leader? Career development, being exposed, bringing in different companies, different people who will talk about their career day-to-day stuff, partnering up with different nonprofits, on helping the students as well. And then community, building a strong community between the mentors and mentees so they continue to build a network. Because as you mentioned, network is everything.
Yeah, in your book, you actually mentioned a quote that I feel like I've been on repeat during this podcast, which is your network is ultimately your net worth. And so when I read that, I was like that's exactly what I've been saying this whole time. Because it's so true. It's really, and you know what? It's really funny today. I had a session with our interns that we work with in the organization I work for, and one of the students said something that I hadn't heard in a while, and he said, "Your skills are more than your major." And he was presenting on his final project for the summer, and I thought, yes, like that is it. It's not just about what your major title is, just because you're a you majored in a certain thing doesn't mean that's exactly what your path has to be, which is why I really wanted to bring you on, Zulma, today, because like I said, I feel like this world of finances really is foreign, especially to young Latino women. And I think being open to, working in the corporate world isn't what we always think of. We think of a lot of times maybe being a teacher, being an engineer or a doctor in the medical field. How have your parents sort of reacted? Like, how is your family in all of this, and how do they play that role in where you've become today?
Yeah, I have to say, like from a very young age, my parents, the one thing I think, coming from where I am, my parents don't really have that whole financial literacy knowledge. And I think that's just common within like, the Hispanic community. But the one thing my dad has always told me since a very young age is like credit is everything.
Oh,
That's
yes,
that's
explain.
the one word that for sure has like, has resonated with him. And I think that's also really stayed with me. The credit is everything. So I think it's helped me also since a very young age, kind of being mindful of that. But from my mom's side, she's been very supportive. Even though sometimes she doesn't understand what I'm going through, like sometimes I will call her and be like, "Hey, I just got the opportunity for this," and she'll be like, "Oh, okay." Like she won't, she can't really relate, but she's very supportive. So just having that additional support from them has been really helpful as just being to where I am today. Um, and
Yeah.
as I mentioned, I also am the oldest of four siblings. So just trying to really be there for them and really pave that way.
Yeah, yeah. And can we go back to that idea though of credit is everything? Because when you're I know I learned this the hard way. I didn't really love my parents to death. They were all about me working at a young age, but they didn't necessarily sit me down and teach me how to manage my finances either. So I was getting paychecks rolling in. So I started working when I was 15, but nobody actually sat down and said, "Hey, here's what credit is. Here's how you should be saving and what a credit bearing savings account, all these things." So, what do you mean when you say credit is everything? How can that translate to like a college student or students and then mean a lot in their future, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, the way we take care of our credit from the initial start, whether, it's getting a credit card or whatever that may be, I think it's really important that we start to build that credit score, because that's ultimately the way, you're able to purchase a home or a car. And I think, a lot of, America runs on credit, with a lot of the purchases we have to do. So to the extent that there's of course healthy types of debt to have, but to the extent that you're trying to build that credit score, making sure you're having those on-time payments and taking care of your credit score, because that can turn over in a matter of seconds.
Yes, it definitely can. And I think for students, there's a lot of banks and things that lure you in and get you really excited about opening up things like credit cards. So, one thing I always say, and I'm actually a proponent of, and I think it's important when students consider or are considering college. I know they're very scared of considering loans or thinking about loans, student loans. But even the smallest subsidized loan of $3,500 as a freshman can help begin to build that credit. And if you are making a decision about a college and you're only $3,500 away from going to your dream college, and that loan is there, my recommendation is to go for the subsidized loan, rather than taking out a credit card, rather than going to a bank and borrowing money from a bank. The interest is going to be insane in those two aspects. Instead, take out a loan, a subsidized loan in which the government is paying your interest, and then begin to build your credit. I don't know if that's something that you talk to your clients about, or just ways that they can build in positive ways their credit. Do you work with communities who are also like maybe like underserved communities starting their own businesses and maybe have really bad credit? What would you tell them? What is their advice?
Yeah, I would say I don't particularly work on like the personal side of banking. I'm more on the middle market side, with companies. But we do a lot of we have different initiatives throughout the organization, and really how to empower those minority companies to really, bridge that gap and close the gap of minority lending through an initiative called Empower at my organization. And I think that's been great, being able to really lead those different events and bring together different, leaders throughout the community who are making changes within those respective communities. But I don't necessarily work with, on the personal side, but I have been, on a personal standpoint, just being able to really, focus on the types of different debt that you have. And I think you made a great comment earlier with the subsidized loan, and a lot of the times, when you're a student, especially, my personal experience, my parents were like, you shouldn't go to that college because you're going to take X amount of loans. I think it's also a self-investment to a certain extent. There's different things of evaluation that you have to consider, of course, but there's to a certain extent, you need to take on some sort of self-investment in order to get where you want to be.
Yes, I'd love it. I like to call it sometimes your skin in the game, but the way that you also want to think about it, it's investing in something that's going to appreciate over time, right? You're investing in your education that will eventually, hopefully, give you more money in the long run, right? Something that will add value to your life. So that's what appreciate means. As opposed to like you going to buy a car, the moment you drive off that parking lot, it depreciates, it loses the value, or the moment you walk off with a computer, it's completely depreciates in value. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not telling folks go out and take a bunch of loans, but if that's the only option holding you back from your dream college, that $3,500 subsidized loan, do your research, understand what you're signing up for, and you know what, don't let it hold you back. So I definitely recommend that. And then one other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, if you feel comfortable, and you are pretty transparent about it in your book, in your story, is sort of the power of relationships in our life. And I am a firm believer that I don't know if you've heard that quote before, where people come into your life for a reason, season, or lifetime. There are certain people that come in for that long lifetime, your best of the bestest friends, and then certain maybe like life partners or relationships that are there to teach you a lesson. So can you share a little bit more about some of the relationships in your life that have maybe helped you grow, some of the people that maybe have pushed you to get outside of your comfort zone and leave certain things?
Yeah, I think, there's definitely been on both sides of it, as you mentioned. There's been people who have come in for a temporary moment of time. And I think at the time I didn't necessarily understand that. And but I look at it now, I'm like, wow, they really taught me, this. For example, one of my temporary friends at the time, um, you know, she really taught me how to really take care of myself and really draw a boundary line among certain things. So I will say, like, there's going to be times where people come in your life and they're only there for a certain period of time, but you're going to take away, things that you should be doing and things that you wouldn't do. So that's something that definitely has, that I've seen throughout, and I'm sure will continue to happen as, continue to evolve.
Yeah, for sure. And I think even if it's the mentors in your life, I'm a huge advocate for finding mentors, particularly in your careers. They may not be in your life forever, but they may be in your life to find you that one piece of network or that one connection that you ultimately needed. Um, and also being open to even, not all relationships are going to be positive, and but they may lead to, they may be a stepping stone to something better. So knowing what you deserve is also really important in this world, for sure.
I think, yeah, and just to add on to that, I think, the biggest piece that I have probably have learned from like people over the last, years is really knowing my value and what I bring to the table and my tolerance for certain things. I think that's the biggest piece that I've learned over time.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I know, maybe when you were younger, there were certain relationships that led you to where you are today. And so I commend you and, thank you for being open to that. I highly recommend folks to look into her book, Today's Inspired Young Latina. Are you planning on co-authoring anything else at this point? Do you have any other things in the pipeline?
In terms of co-authoring, not at the moment. But knowing myself, I always have tons of ideas. So who knows? Who knows the next even week or so?
Yes, maybe we've got to start a new, like a virtual group mentoring program. I know that always sparks in some way, shape, or form, especially through these conversations. And so the last question I have for you, and this is something that I sort of ask all of our guests, and this is just like the final pieces of advice. If you could go back to your high school and college self, what are three pieces of advice that you would, remind yourself of now that you know better, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is being my true self. I think a lot of the times when I think back at my high school journey, I tried to really fit a box versus, bringing my true self. So, say it loud and proudly where you come from. Don't ever forget of, where you came from, but be happy of where you're going. The
I
second
love
one,
that. I'm sorry. The
that's
audience
okay.
couldn't see me, but I'm like, yes, I love that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, the second one being is be be open to change. There's something I've been really open to, but if there's someone like, that's like maybe wondering if they should pursue an opportunity, I just want to let you know that on the other side of fear lies everything you've ever wanted. And it's a quote that has always stood with me whenever I'm like fearing an opportunity or a decision in life. And then the third one is, you know, your network is everything. Start networking at such an early age, and there's so many different types of networking, whether it's your neighbor or it's at a professional event, or continue to build those relationships, but also be mindful of who you're letting into your life and where you're spending that energy.
Yes, absolutely. I think we tend to, especially when we're in colleges, where we're trying to find our space, we tend to push all of our energy to places that may not fit us. So thank you for sharing that one because I think it's not just in college, it's in our career. Um, how do you feel that your space is in your career right now? Are you pretty confident that this is where you're going to be, or do you have anything in the pipeline in terms of building your own thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I really enjoy what I do. I mean, just being able to really understand how businesses work and, being able to really evaluate the risk. Having said that, I'm a really open-minded person when it comes to different opportunities, and I do have a very entrepreneurial mindset. So, TBD on my own business, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the next like 10 years or so, that is a possibility.
I know, right? I wouldn't be surprised either, Zulma. And in a few months, even, I might just reach out and say, hey, what's the new biz? Thank you so much for joining today. I just have to reemphasize this idea of how, valuable network is. I know I've been repeating this in some of our earlier podcasts, but I met Zulma because I also stepped out of my comfort zone and I signed up for a course that was called The Other. And it wasn't necessarily, of course, because I felt like the other, but then as we started talking, I started realizing, you know what, there are instances in my life and in my career at my job that I need to reground myself. I need to find, my voice in certain spaces, and maybe it's been overrun by others, but I felt so much value in that small group of dialogue. That's how I met Zulma. And then, fast forward again, these networks begin to grow and grow and grow. So if I can emphasize anything to folks listening today is, take every relationship, every connection as a value and, grow from it and ask questions along the way.
I couldn't agree more. Thanks again for having me today, and I look forward to hearing future podcasts.
Thank you so much, Zulma. We will see you next time. If this is your first time tuning in, know that we have these live interviews at most Tuesdays in the summer. The last one will be at the end of September, but you can always tune in. We're actually now on YouTube. So for folks who are just tuning in, you can tune in on the audio on any podcast platform, but now you can also see us live no matter where you're calling from or where you're tuning in from on YouTube. Thank you again, Zulma. Have a good rest of your day, and thanks for tuning in from the East Coast. I appreciate you.
You too. Have a great night.
Bye. Thank you for tuning into this inspired conversation where I interviewed an incredible changemaker in higher education. I'm your host, Andrea Cova-Bernal, and for a list of upcoming interviews, follow Inspired Conversations Pod on Instagram and click the link in my bio. If you are tuning in today and have questions about college applications, college success, or financial aid, you're not alone. I've been a college access and success counselor for many years, and I've got your back. Email me at counselorcova@gmail.com. Again, that's counselorcova@gmail.com. Remember, your success is our community's success, and you got this. I'll see you next time.